Oh, all right. Right, I hit the live button. Um, yeah, so I guess I hit it 1 minute early just to give a bit of time for the notifications to go out and to say hi and the whole "can everybody hear me, are my levels okay" thing that most streams start with. Um, so anyway, how's everybody doing out in One Deck Dungeon Kickstarter code watching land? Cool. Levels sound good. You are doing great. Yay, thank you. Early is always better. Yeah. I wouldn't usually call myself an early person, but once in a while. So, alright. Yeah, it's almost the final 24 hours, is it? I can't remember exactly when it's started, but we're getting near the end of the One Deck Dungeon Kickstarter. Normally during this time, pledges pick up significantly. Because people have put it on their reminder list or whatever, and then they're getting their notifications, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that thing," and whatnot. So, and it's people's last chance to be a part of it, to get stretch goals, whatever. So I expect to see some movement there, which will be cool because then we might reach some stretch goals. Oh yeah, sorry, last 48 hours. I misspoke. Anyway, so today we're going to do a double-sided programming stream between John, Arnold, and I. So I'll be starting off by coding something in the engine, and then John will take over and start coding, take what I wrote and start coding the UI side. And because that is, generally the flow of programming, I do back end, he does front end kind of stuff. That made sense to do because then we can kind of show it all in one stream. So let's get started. So today we're going to code a new hero. Right now, the paladin is in there. The maid or the archer is sort of in there, but we're going to cover putting in the mage. So this is the mage here. I won't go over the gameplay again. Last time I did, but I feel like that was already covered. So I'm just going to assume you know what most of these things are now and just kind of go over the details of what we're doing. So hero cards have two sides, a one-player side and a two-player side, and the main differences being the two-player side has fewer items since there are two players sharing the stats. The heroic feat is usually a little bit less powerful, so the difference in this one, in one player you can roll 0 to 2 dice, and you store a black die or a heroic die when you explore or flee, and you can store up to 2 dice. But in the two-player side, you can only store 1. And then usually there's a completely different skill on the one-player side and the two-player side. So in one player, you can freely prevent 1 wound, which is nice. And in the two-player, your partner either gains a strength 1 or an agility 1, and I find that most useful for them to use their skills that they have to pay for. So if they have a skill that costs a strength or an agility, you give it to them and then they use it for that skill. I find that's what it's most useful for, since usually a 1 isn't super useful, but sometimes it is. Cool. So let's get started on that. So I'll just keep one open at a time so it doesn't take up. I have my wallpaper on random and it just so happens to have the mage. How coincidental. Alright. So I guess I'll do like that, maybe make it smaller so we can get a bit more screen space here. Oh, I guess that's as narrow as it'll let me do it. Alright, whatever. Right, so I had this issue last time where it didn't, every time I went to a new thing. Anyway. Okay. So first things first, let's put in a definition. Hero list. Right. So here's the paladin here. And I'll go over what all these things are as I'm typing them. So I'll just copy and paste that. Oh, by the way, I usually mention this, but I haven't yet. If you have a specific thing you want me to see in the chat, make sure to do @Jean-Marc, because then it highlights it. Otherwise, sometimes I don't notice or miss it or whatever. Anyway, so I copy paste that. So the identifier is mage, and the title is mage, and you just take whatever's there and put it there, basically. That's most of what this list is, in case you missed it last time. This is basically just data representing what is actually important here to a computer. You know, like a computer doesn't have any data representation of this image. I mean, obviously it has a file of the image, but that's on the view side. The engine doesn't need to know what the image is, but like these are just numbers. So on the 1 player side, she has a strength 1, an agility 2, a magic 4, a health 5, so we can leave that. And her innate skill identifier is this down here. Shield, aura. Okay. Now we'll load up the 2 player side. We'll do the same thing. So she has no strength, 2 player. So you gotta really compensate for that when you're playing with 2 players. 1 agility and 3 magic and 3 health. And her innate skill is power transfer. These are case sensitive, so I gotta make sure that I don't mistype anything. Although I'll know when I run the thing and there's errors, but anyway. Okay, so heroic feat. So let's see here. Go back to mana charge. And then the title's the same. Whoop. But it has this. What am I doing? There's a space in it. There we go. So, and then the 1 player body and the 2 player body are different. So I'll write them each out. A little zoomed in here, so I kind of have to scroll around to see everything. But roll any or all of your dice stored here. Store a heroic, and this is used to represent the icon that the view will take care of. Here, when you explore or flee, you may store up to 2 dice at a time. Okay. And on the 2 player side, it's similar but a little different. Roll your stored die. And then this is to represent a new line, since it doesn't continue from there. store a heroic here when you explore or flee. You may only store one die at a time. Okay. And encounter types are foe in peril, combat in peril. And you can't use it in a boss, but I don't need to put that there because basically when a heroic feat doesn't explicitly say boss, then it assumes you can't use it. And that just made more sense than having an encounter type that is not boss, because a boss is an encounter type. It is not an encounter type. So it was kind of confusing, but the view will kind of just know what to do from there. Okay, so now we have sort of the surface level of this done. The next thing we need to do is we need to give these definitions, because if we run this now, and I'll just do a very quick thing here to demonstrate this. Not that one, that one. Go down here. So I'll make a quick test. Mage. I'll flesh these out in a bit here. So first hero identifier is mage, and if I run this it'll probably fail because I haven't written all the definitions yet. Yeah, so could not load definition with identifier, shield, or like it has no idea what these things are at this point. So we have to define them. Now that doesn't mean we immediately have to implement the code for them. We just have to make it so that they exist as something to look up. Basically, like they exist in a database. So the first one is shield aura, and I've been keeping these in alphabetical order just to keep it tidy. So it would go right above this one. Shield aura. Cost die type, this one is free. With a small f because free isn't actually a die type, so I don't want it to look up the die type of free because that doesn't exist. I don't need an amount because it is free. And this is for apparel, but not combat. And its effect is prevent. No, sorry. Shield aura. It's the same as this, so basically the skill and the effect share an identifier. And we put a space here because this is the name that the players are going to see. Prevent consequences. Okay. And then amount of wounds. So I'll explain this here in a sec. Prevent wound. Okay. Right. So this is the actual name of the effect going on. But in order to avoid specifically programming each one, we have sort of like a generalized collection of effects, and one of them is preventing consequences. So if it says prevent wound or prevent time or whatever, we use this one, and then we can specify the amount of wounds or the amount of times prevented. And I just put the body separately. I mean, we could have done a thing where it's like it can look at this and automatically output the body, but sometimes card designers put in special wording or something in a specific situation or for clarification or whatever, so I usually just don't make that automatic and just go ahead and put it in. You know, if the wording changes for clarity, it's not affected by what's going on here. Okay, so that's the first one. And then the other one is power transfer. So I guess that would go right above it. And that's the Mage 2. It is free. This one is used in combat. And then this one is your partner gains either 1 strength or 1 agility. Yeah, I don't have any system set up for your partner. We haven't actually implemented the 2-player stuff yet. And because that's not necessary to like get a working game going. Usually we try and get a working game going as quickly as possible, and then add extra features, in this case 2-player. So yeah, I don't have anything for this, so I guess I'll just put gain dice for now, and I'll fill this in later when it's actually important, but it won't work right now, and that's okay. 1 or agility, 1. For those of you who use HTML, this just means to bold the number, since it's bold there. Okay, so if we run that now, it might still throw an error, but it shouldn't complain about these two. So let's see if that is the case. Okay. So it didn't complain about that. Right, so the next thing is the mana charge, the heroic feat. Now, unlike most things like skills or effects or whatever that are pretty simple, you know, gain a die, roll a die, whatever, heroic feats have a bit more to them, and they're pretty unique. You know, like each hero specifically has a different heroic feat, and there's not much overlap between them, other than storing and rolling heroic dice, but like the situations and all that change around. So I actually go ahead and code these individually instead of using the general library of effects, because trying to make all that super generic would take a lot of time and not be really worth the effort, since it's almost never reused. So what that means is that I actually make a unique controller or unique logic for each heroic feat. So Valiant is the Paladins, Eagle Eye is the Archers. This is just a base class for any shared code between them. And now I'm going to make a new one and call it Mana Charge Heroic Feat Controller. Okay, and then for the sake of saving some time, just copy some of this stuff over. Okay, and I'll expand this so we can see. Okay, so, and then I can just copy from here. Right here. This is just for reference. I keep what it does as a comment so that I don't have to like go somewhere else to know what this thing is supposed to do. Every time. Not that I come back to these too often, because usually they... But anyway. Okay. And I'll make a new region for methods here. Right, so here it says, when it creates the heroic feat, it says, oh, this class doesn't exist, I'll just make a generic one, but a generic one would do nothing, so that wouldn't be useful. So let's run that again, and there, it's the warning's gone because this class now exists. So start watching actions. So this basically says I want you to keep an eye on what's going on in the game, and the reason is because it says store a die here when you explore flee, sorry. So the mage has to keep an eye on when you explore or you flee. So let's start storing some dice. So I'm just going to write a quick test here and make it fail. Next, choose dungeon option, and then explore. Okay. So basically this just goes to a state where we choose what to do in the dungeon, between exploring, opening a door, going into an already open door. And basically I'll just say explore. In your first turn, that's all you can really do anyway. And then, so we've selected it, but we actually have to go to the next state in order to actually, I guess I could, no, okay. Right, so we decided to explore, we go to the next state, and then we're exploring. Now this is the point in which she would say, aha, I get a heroic die, but this hasn't happened yet. So let's see, what do I, where's, right, a certain number of dice at location. Okay, I could probably make a helper for that, but anyway, I'll do it the long way for now. Certain number of dice at location. So after having just explored, there should be one die stored right here. So we get heroic feat, storage. Right, that's the location. And it should be a heroic die at that. So basically this just goes ahead and explores. And then one heroic die should be stored here. Now I haven't programmed that yet, so this should fail, but that's kind of what I want. And I'm actually going to go ahead and disambiguate what this does. So mage, store heroic die when exploring. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna take a look at the chat. How's development going? It's going really well, thanks. We haven't run into any significant issues or anything as far as I've noticed. Saving and loading was a little bit more tricky than usual, but overall it's been pretty straightforward, so that's good. Okay. So I run the test, and there's no heroic die on the heroic feat. Well, that's pretty much what I expected to happen because we haven't programmed that yet. So we can close off these ones. And then, so basically I have to say, okay, well now I have to watch the actions. Oops. So every time an action has occurred, tell me about it, and I'm going to take a look. So if the party just explored ... So if is explore action or fled. So I'll add the flee part later. And you'll notice this is turning red because I haven't written this method yet. But I will do that in a moment. So if is explore action, store a heroic die here. And because storing dice is a common thing for heroic feats to do, I just wrote a helper to do that. So store heroic die. And we can take a look at that if we want to. So if the number of stored dice is less than the maximum number of stored dice, then we move a heroic die, if there are any, from the general supply to the heroic feat. And I forget where we actually set the oh right, maximum number of stored dice. So I'm going to need to include this as well, so that it's the same as Valiant, but one player mode, mana charge, can store up to 2 dice. In 2-player mode, it stores 1 die. I put card instead of can here. I write card so often in programming these games that it's just something my fingers do sometimes. So the maximum number, it checks the number of heroes. If it's 1, it can store 2, otherwise it's 1. So it's the same as Valiant. But it isn't always this way, so I don't want to make it generalized. Cool. So then is explore action. Okay, so this is a helper I'm going to make. So I go dig down to just forget where I there it is. There are a lot of helper methods. I really like helper methods for many reasons, but sometimes I forget where I put them. Alright, but it's in the region helper methods, so that makes sense. Okay, anyway, is explore game action action. Okay, explore action. Don't worry if you don't understand too much about what this is doing. This just kind of makes it easy for me to check, like, is there an explore action, and I can specify exactly which one I want a little easier too. And I guess while I'm there, I may as well do is flee action as well. And this is allowed to be null because most of the time there's nothing to check. And I'll add this here. Right. Just in case it's not provided. Okay, should do that. So if the party just explored or fled, store a heroic die here. So let's see if that much works. There we go. That worked. Okay, so the heroes go ahead and explore, and then moved a heroic, and this is heroic die number 24. I just put this here so I can tell one heroic die from another. That doesn't mean it's the value 24, because that wouldn't make sense. So move die heroic number 24 from the general supply to storage. And this doesn't mean the 24th heroic die, it means the 24th die. Anyway. From the general supply to storage. Cool. So that works. And that's good for that test. And we also want it if they flee. So we can copy most of this. To next. Go to next open door choice. Right, so when you open a door in One Deck Dungeon, you can choose whether to enter the door and overcome the challenge, or you can flee, and that's what this is referring to, is when you run away. You take basically you take the opportunity to charge your mana. It's always nice in games in general, I find, when something that is normally a disadvantage, like fleeing, because then you waste some time, has different ways of mitigating that disadvantage. And in this case, like the mage is going to get a heroic die, so that's cool, kind of a nice design choice there. So let's say they see an ice elemental. If that's the first foe you run into at the start of the game, usually you're not going to fight it, so that makes sense. So let's open a door and we find an ice elemental. Oh no. Right, so open door. Open the door with the ice elemental. So the heroes bust open a door, revealing an ice elemental. And then approach. Oops. Whoops. Approach the challenge or flee an ice elemental, and then we choose use. So this says we choose enter room or flee. True means enter the room and false means flee, basically. Since that's not necessarily self-evident. So we run that. The party decides to run away to live another day. And then moved heroic die from the general supply to storage. So, I mean, we've already verified that's there, but if we run the test, whoops, what happened? Oh, right, okay. So here's what's going on here. So I use this helper to go to the first open door choice, but in order for this to be possible, the party has to have already explored. So by the time this even gets here, she already has one die. So I guess, so what we'll do is we'll say she should have one here, and then right after fleeing, she should have two. Oh, I put that one spot too high. And actually I'll put it right before the she uses the activation, just to make sure that somehow it doesn't happen when she opens the door or whatever. There, okay. Cool. So that worked as expected. And actually we can go ahead and add mage may not have more than 2 stored dice. And this is 1-player mode here, again, because we haven't coded 2-player mode at this point. So basically I'll just make her open another door, choose to flee, and she should still only have 2 dice. Go to next, choose door choice, open some random door, doesn't really matter what it is. Choose to flee, and she should still only have 2 heroic dice. Uh-oh, it's stuck. Alright, something must be, sometimes the helpers don't really understand where they are in the flow of things. That's just on me to fix, but I won't do that right now, so I'll do this a little more manually. Let's see if go to next. Let's see if that works. Yeah, it's not working. Okay. Enter. Yeah, this is something I need to fix at some point. Oh, right. Deftaru pointed out that I still have the 2-player one for reference here, so I probably won't need the 2-player one. Good catch. I didn't even notice. Okay. There we go. Yeah, so it just didn't know how to get from where it was to here in the helper. So I just probably need a little bit of logic to let it know where it is. So they run away. They start the turn. Select which door to open. They open a door, revealing a locked door. Oh no, they opened a door to find a locked door. Terrifying. So they decide to run away, but now she doesn't gain another die because she already is at her max. So that's good. Alright, so that's the storage part. Now we want to make sure that she can actually use those, right? So the flow of the engine already has it so that right before you actually start placing dice and all that stuff, you have a chance to use your heroic feat, since that's what the rules, the timing the rules specify. And basically you just click on it to use it or not. And because the heroic feat is actually a derivative of an effect, we basically just have to define doing the effect. Do effect. Okay. So I'll just put a temporary thing here. Just to make sure that we get to this point. Go back here, make a new test. And what are we going to call it? Yeah. Roll stored heroic die. Okay, so we're just going to have one. And we're not going to run away. So go to next, use heroic feat. We'll say we're fighting a glooping ooze. I think that's all the information I need to provide there. Encounter a glooping ooze, and use our heroic die. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that the heroic feat is activated. Basically, this just means that, like, we're acknowledging, yes, we can use this now. We use heroic feat on player 1, who in this game happens to be the only one, but in a 2-player game, we'd want to specify which one we're using. And so yeah, use the heroic feat, and then we should have an activation to roll a die. And the hero rolling the die is the first player hero, and the die we should be rolling is the only one in storage. Actually, yeah, I can just do that. Okay. So this is just asserting that, like, we've sent something to the view saying, okay, you can roll the stored die now. And by that point, it should already be in the in their dice pool. So a certain number of dice in dice pool. Die type heroic. It should have no value yet, and we expect there to be one of them. Let's see if that works so far. Nope. Right, so here we have the output mana charge. We didn't actually define what this does. Roll any or all of your dice stored here. Roll stored dice. I made a little helper because this is another common thing. Basically it moves the dice, activates the roll die activation. If there's just one, then you can just go ahead and roll that. If there's two of them, or rather greater than one, then you actually have to choose how many you want to roll first. But I just put that in a helper because that's common between a few different effects. So let's run that now. There we go. So right, so we can we use the heroic feat right here. Move the die to the die pool. Now there's a roll dice activation, and we use roll die activation. And we have to define what we want the results to be. Let's say we rolled a 5. And then, so this should now have a value. And let's see if that works. Cool. Mage used a heroic feat and rolled a heroic 5. Alright. That is good. So that covers this part. I could also test this part. You may store up to 2 dice at a time, and selecting here. And the only reasons I'm not, one is the interest of time. The other one is that this uses the same code as the Paladin's Valiant, and I already have tested it there, so I'm pretty confident in it. I can add it later, but I won't do it right now. Just gonna ask John if he'd like to pass it now, or if you'd like to give me some time to do the skill as well. So I don't know if he's in the chat or not. Oh, I guess he's offline. Okay. Up to you. Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if you were in a rush, but sounds like you're not. So, yeah, I guess I can go ahead with that. And if it takes me too long or I run into bugs or whatever, then we'll wrap it up. But we'll see what happens. Live life dangerously here. Okay. So, right, shield aura. So let's go skill list, shield. All right, prevent consequences, 1 wound. Right, so let's follow that along. I just want to make sure that I won't completely explain what I'm doing here. I just want to make sure it gets to the spot it's supposed to be. So amount of wounds, that's stored there. Effect definition, or effect factory. This is a pretty big one here. Sometimes code needs to be really big, so you kind of hide it in something really small, and that's sort of what's going on here. Amount of wounds is there. Prevent consequences effect is here. Half wounds, so that would be for the paladin, saying like it's not a fixed number of wounds she prevents, it's like basically half her wounds. So amount of wounds. Okay, So then I go, I won't explain this part, but I will explain the next part. So so this is the shared code we have for preventing consequences. So anything that prevents consequences uses this, but it might use it a little differently. So for example, if half wounds is true, it'll do what the paladin does, and just for every 2 hearts you would lose, prevent 1 heart. If you don't want this behavior, this should be null or false. If you want a fixed number and amount of wounds, this question mark means it's allowed to be null, in case we don't care about it. Normally I put comments. It looks like I didn't for this one, but I will do that. If set the exact number of wounds prevented. If set and true, prevent half the wounds. Okay, so then down here we've covered the case where it's half wounds. We haven't covered the case where it's a specific amount. So has value, prevent wounds. All right, John just said we're getting close to that 25,000 stretch goal. Awesome. All right, so we just prevent wounds. We already have the damage the action of the damage we're preventing, so we just need to tell it how much, and it's this amount of wounds value. Okay. That might actually be the whole thing. Well, I guess we'll see. If it works. There's always that caveat, if it works. Shield aura. Prevent 1 wound in peril. Okay, new game. First, make sure it's the mage, otherwise it won't work. Go to use skills and place dice. We'll go up against the treacherous. What's a pretty treacherous? The boulder. The boulder has 3 or 4 wounds dealt, so that would be pretty bad. Looks like I haven't defined that criteria yet, so I will do that. Looks like I have a question. Citizen says, hey Jean-Marc, let me come up for air from work long enough to tell you the Fanatic theme. Preview sounds great. Oh yes, the preview is awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I've been really looking forward to doing her theme for pretty much since I knew we would be doing themes. I really like sort of like big choral music, but for her in particular, I knew it had to be aggressive, so I wanted it to be kind of that dynamic of like sacred holiness and aggressive background, and I also wanted to make sure to differentiate it from the apostate theme. Like, you know, it still needed to sound heroic, not just like insane. So what was the choice for Fanatic? Sorry, I don't know what you mean by what was the choice for Fanatic. So so I will set this here. Criteria apparel. Boulder. Okay, should do it. So let's see. If we go to suffer consequences, how many wounds will we suffer from that boulder? What did I do wrong? Oh, I used the wrong helper. Oh, of all the sentinels, I wasn't really involved in the decision on that. That'd be a good question for Handelabra, though. Right, so we need to make sure that she takes wounds at all, so we'll say that she rolls all ones, which would be pretty terrible. Okay, so she takes 3 wounds, because she selected the first option, and then maybe I'll make that explicit here. Just to make sure it's consistent. So go to apparel and use shield. Aura. Okay, and then the mage should suffer 1 less, 1 fewer. So, so we quick current health storage. So she should have. So after the battle, she should have 2 fewer health than before, rather than 3 fewer, as she would normally have. So let's see. Mage took 3 wounds. Okay, so that... Yeah, so it looks like that didn't work. Let's see why. Aha! I forgot to assign the property. Amount of wounds. Sometimes it's just something simple. I like it when it is. Yay! Alright. Shield aura prevented 1 out of 3 wounds. Mage took 2 wounds. Cool. And that covers the entire 1-player side of the mage. So yeah, this is a good time for me to take any final questions, wrap up, and then hand it over to John. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to post them now. I'll wait a minute or so and then wrap up. Great to watch someone else program. You mean because you don't have to do it? Well, I'm glad it's entertaining and interesting. Yeah, sometimes you can learn something from watching someone else do the same thing you do. Particularly any things they do that are different than the way you do it. It might give you some ideas for next time. So I've definitely picked up some things just from watching other people program or compose music. You know, I use Reaper for music, and then sometimes they'll do something, and I'm like, I didn't even know you could do that, because Reaper has like a billion options. All right. Thanks for showing us programming. You're welcome. Ping in the chat when you're ready for me to start streaming. Okay. I will do that. So yeah, thanks everybody. The stream is going to go offline for a couple minutes, and then John will be back to keep working on what I'm doing. So thanks. There is a question. When do you make the design decision on whether something is generic, shield skill, or unique, mana charge? I try and make those kinds of decisions very early in the process. I really enjoy software engineering, i.e. the design of the code. And because we have pretty much the whole game right in front of us right from the start, there's usually not too many surprises. The biggest surprise, of course, is when expansions come out and they do something brand new that they never did before. So sometimes we just ask the designer, like, are you ever going to do this or not, because it matters right now. And then sometimes it's like, well, I don't know, maybe, in which case we assume they will. And if they're like, no, that's like specifically goes against what we're trying to do, then we can make a different design decision. But to answer your specific question, basically, like, I try and look for anything that's similar between a lot of code and try and reduce the amount that I'm writing the same thing over and over. So that's why, like, the skills all use just generic effects, because there's a lot that prevent such amount of wounds, or roll these many dice, or like, they're really, really simple. And so just having all of them have different names but all pointing to the same thing with a couple of different parameters made sense. Heroic feats, on the other hand, like mana charge, some of them store dice and roll those, or some of them, like, when you start, you decide how much time you're going to spend, and that's how many dice you get to roll, or whatever. They're all different, and none of them are like similar enough that it made sense to just make it a big generic thing. At least not to me. And there aren't that many of them. That also affects it. Like, if there were hundreds of these things, then yeah, I would try and make it simpler. But because there's only like 5 in the base set, it wasn't going to be a lot of work to just do each one individually. I hope that answers your question. All right, so that's going to be it. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and don't touch that remote. We'll be right back with John Arnold. Bye.
Hello out there. Let me know in the chat if you are seeing me. Hooray! Alright, I'm going to go without headphones or whatever here. Keep it simple, as having some audio connection issues there. So, it's just going to be audio live, and you might hear some sound effects from the game. Cool, so Jean-Marc programmed in the mage, and so we're going to bring in the mage into the view, as we call it. So let's go over to my Git client and see if I have some new commits pushed up. Not yet, maybe. Oh, there we go. Implemented mage 1p. Cool. All right, so I need to recompile the engine here. And I should be able to hang with the mage, as they say. Merry Commitmas, Jean-Marc says. Cool. All right, so Unity recompiles here automatically. As you can see, some things have changed here. There's less. You see less because less is more. Before, things were being sort of hard-coded in the scene, but now they're being filled in dynamically. So if we run the scene, we'll see what I've currently got it set up with. So yes, pack those sprite atlases every time. We've got the dragon's cave, and these things are being populated, and the archer is being populated here with her information. And some of the interactions are working. This animation is still in. I didn't put in the other animation. And then we fill in the dungeon boxes and all that stuff. It's looking really blurry for some reason. I think it's something to do with Unity being weird. But we can still see it nice and sharp in the scene view. Cool. So, and then we can enter, and we have the opportunity for the heroic feat right now. I'm just going to skip it, and the dice appear. That's sort of where we are right now. And so what we want to do is check out the mage and see how the mage's heroic feat is working and get it integrated, because it's probably not going to work right away. And that ambulance is very excited about that. Give me a whoop whoop. So let's change this to be the mage instead. And Jennifer's already set up the graphics, so we should see the mage image come in straight away here. Yep, there it is, and the mage's values look accurate to me. Let's have a look at the text here, the heroic feat, mana charge. I have the old version, so it's a little different, but that looks good. This needs to say health, so I may as well go fix that. Let's go fix that, and we can see that show the icon properly. And where are those cards? It's not there. It's in the effect list, I guess. No. Where did you put this tag? That isn't the one. That's right. Here we go. That's the health icon. So we'll fix that, and then when we recompile, we should get the right text. All right, come on, little computer. It's busy sharing its screen, compiling things. This is longer than it should take. Oh, there we go. That's fine. Not a big fan of this packing sprite atlases thing that comes up every time. Should send it a bug report for that. There we go. Prevent health icon. So that's cool. So we're just restarting from the start each time, and I fixed the random seed so I know that I'm going to get the right thing. So we explored, and actually we got some errors here and paused because of the new logic. So you can see in the console here, it's logging some stuff about, we're moving a die. So what it's doing is it's trying to move the heroic die out of the storage, the general supply, to that heroic feat. And so the view doesn't know how to deal with that yet. So let's go in and tell it how to deal with it. Right now, all it knows about is the normal sort of die creation thing. So the reason here is that we are storing a heroic die, and then we got a null reference probably related to doing that. Because we tried to create it in a place where that was null. So right now you can see what we're doing in this method here. This is when the move die action comes in. We're animating it, and we're doing different things. It's going to depend on what we're doing. So If we're moving it because we're gathering the dice, then we're going to be adding, we actually initialize them and show them like they appear from the little item areas for a nice effect. But this one, we're going to create it from the general supply and move it over to the heroic feat, I think is what we're going to want to do. So let's put in the case for that. Oops. Autocorrect in this IDE is not always movie. It's not a movie. Move die. And we are storing a heroic die. Okay. And we can say we are moving a die from the general supply onto the heroic feat. Okay, so we basically need to find the place on the screen that we want to do this, so let's add. I don't have a control here for the general supply, so I'm just going to make a rect transform property for it. Dice supply, and we'll probably make that an actual class and hook it up, but for now we'll just use that. So we'll say, no matter what, when we're doing it for this reason, the initial placement is going to be the general supply. And it'll create the die there. And where we're going to go to is we're going to go to the heroic feat. So is heroic feat skill location, item location? I'm not sure what it's going to do, but let's just not worry about that part. Let's worry about creating the die first, and then it'll warn us about it doesn't know where to go. So let's do that. So we'll need to hook up this transform here in the places. So we've got the same sort of thing. If you're familiar with the bottom of the ninth streams I did, the similar sort of factory pattern. It's not really a factory pattern, but it's each game action and activation has its own class that deals with what's going on with that. And feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I will keep an eye on it. It's on my iPad here. So the dice supply is over here in the utility panel. We'll just connect that up. Right now, that's just all hard-coded. It hasn't been hooked up, but maybe we'll do that today. Because that's something I want to do with these is have those numbers reflect what's going on. So let's run this, and when we explore, what happened? Something happened, but I don't know what. Oh, there we go. Oh, I see. I clicked earlier or something. Cool. So where did that? We added the die, but I don't see it. We created a die. There's the position, die position, and right. Oh, we ended up like moving it like off screen or something. I guess probably. Yeah. It's there. Oh, it's there. It's just really tiny. Look at that. It's still tiny. We didn't make it bigger. Right, because we paused and then, right, so then I have a pause in there. So then it moved up into the middle here. Sure. Okay, so let's make it move over to the heroic feat location. And we'll clean up exactly where it goes in the future, but for now we'll just have it sort of go over there. There's going to be lots more to do with how do we make sure that there's UI that makes that work and stuff. Jean-Marc added a thing that was missing. All right, well, let's go get it. And I can make my command here, fix body text. And we'll pull in Jean-Marc's change. And we'll rebuild that. Daftaro says, encounter die placement is bottom right, question mark. I don't understand your question, sorry. And we'll recompile here. All right, and so now in the code we should be able to check to see sometimes you have to quit the editor and go back in for it to pick up changes. All right, into here. There it is. Okay. So if it's heroic feat storage, we're move the die to the heroic feat view. Cool, and we have a little helper for that actually. We have in the heroes panel, which is like the thing that holds the heroes. Right now there's one, but there could be two, or in someday 4. But we have a method here to find the heroic feat view. And I don't know how we're going to get that. I guess we can go to the owner hero card controller and go to the heroic feat controller. Yeah, that should work. And we'll do this, and then we'll get its rect transform. Cool, so now we should have a destination on screen for that to go for that. And, oh, I don't want a vector 3, I see, right, it's looking for a vector, not a, so we need to convert that. So there is a way to convert that to the position that the dice box needs. And let me see how I'm doing that. Yeah. I'll probably make a little better I could probably make a helper here. This is using like some transforms to move things, to decide positions of things. So I'll just make a quick helper function here to get the dice, like the position that the die would want to go to, based on that transform. Get die local position of this rect transform. And, right, so this is using, this code is using the world positions, but that's okay. Because we can, here, so yeah, so we're getting the user interface screen position of that rect transform, then we're getting what's that in the world space, and then we can convert that to a local position for the die. And we need to have the die here to be able to do that. Though I think, yeah, I'm trying to think if the world position and local positions, I think they start at 0. But we can actually convert it with the dice parent game object, because all the dice are underneath that. And there's a way to transform. Yes, transform point from local to world. Transform point from world to local. And that's what we're going to return. Okay. So this should get the die going to where we want. And let's go back here. And we can say this is the transform, and then the local destination is going to be in the dice box, which has the ability to do this conversion. What did I call that method? Get die local position. Okay. Coordinate transforms are always exciting things. All right, so we'll recompile here, and we see if we get our die going where we want. If not, we will figure it out. All right, so we do this, spend time and everything, and now we explore. Here comes a die, and I just got an error. So what happened? Null reference. Oh, so then one of these things is null, I guess. So we're gonna have to find out what is null. To do that, we can just sort of break this down. We can say that the hero is this. And like there's no other, like this location, if it's the heroic feat of the hero, should have a connection back to the hero that I can use. I guess I can just use, there's another, I could use I could use this instead. Maybe this is not working right. Let's just use this, because the die should be owned by that hero now. Maybe that other piece isn't hooked up properly. All right, let's explore. We get a die, and we get a null reference again. So something is not working. I do have a connection to the heroes panel, right? Yes. All right, well, what's null here? I guess we'll need to do some logging here and see what's going on. So, vertical wrap mode, come on. What is this? Autocomplete is just being ridiculous. All right, this should let us know what's going on. For some reason, we are not finding the hero that this die is supposed to belong to. Jean-Marc says he thinks he knows why. Well, I would like to find out. So, the owner is null. So, I hope Jean-Marc can fix that. because I need to know who owns the die. So while Jean-Marc is looking into that, we could do a different thing. Let's see. One thing we could do is just comment this part out, and we'll just put it. We'll just put it on. It'll just go to the middle of the screen. That's fine. And then we'll go to the next part while Jean-Marc's working on that. All right. So we're spending time. We're using our torch. We make our die. It just goes in the middle of the screen. Whoa, it's real big. Let's go to this encounter, and we can enter the room. And so here's our chance to use our heroic feat. So I'm gonna just clear the log and see what happens when we click on it. Right, so here, so when you use this heroic feat, you just roll it. And so what we're going to be doing is moving looks like we're moving a die from there, from the storage area to somewhere else. So, and it's going to be the heroic die. So here my logic is like, we have to create the die because we couldn't find it. And that might be true. I don't know why it didn't find it. It should have found that die object. Oh, Jean-Marc says he's ready. Okay. Let's see if we can get that first part going. Go up tree. And let me stop Unity here. I think it's still running. All right, let's recompile this. And go back to Unity. So as you can see, there's always lots of back and forth. Usually not live on TV, but through the workday, we go back and forth and on various items to make things work right. It's not just a one-person kind of affair. All right, so let's see now. Oh, I still have that code commented out, so I better go and uncomment that. Come on, packing sprite atlases. You don't need to pack. You already are packed. Let's uncomment this code. And it should move to the right spot. All right, so our hourglass goes, and we explore. Here comes our die, and it still has a null reference. The owner is still null. If that helps Jean-Marc. So we could check the location controllers. Hero card controller instead, but I would expect that the move actions hero card would also be the same hero, but we can see if this works. Because that hero is the one who's doing that thing. I would expect it belongs to them. All right, we're trying this. Hey, the die goes over there and disappeared. I don't know where it went. Where did it go? Oh, it went up, and so like did it go up too high? Yes. Oh, it went like it's like a Z. It's like a camera, like a camera thing. So that's one of the things actually in the dice box here. We like when it does the world coordinates, it like gives it a weird y value, and we need to like give it a y value that is not crazy. So we'll just fix it here. Probably shouldn't have a magic number there, but we'll sort that later via property. This should do it. Fingers crossed. Come on. Here we go. All right. So we explored. The die comes out of the general supply. Look at that. Amazing. And so right now, obviously, it's sort of hanging out. You can see in the game, this is down here is what's actually on the screen. Up here is a little different. But we probably want it to be like a little up from there. You know, it says here, but you want to be able to read it. So, you know, we'll probably move it to be up a little bit or something like that. So we can, let's see, what are we going to need to do for that? Where does it need to go? We can just add a little offset to it for now. I think that's going to be the Z value. If we add like a 0.5 or even a 1 to the Z, it'll go to the right place. So let's just do that for now. And we'll make that, well, look nice for the stream, right? To put this in a, you know, make this property from the skill view, maybe. But we can just say the dot z plus equals, say, 0.8. That looks about right. We're not always taking shortcuts like that, but for the stream, we'll save some time and do that. And so we'll just make sure that looks the way we want, and then we'll go to the next part. Yeah, there you go. It's up there. That's fine. Cool. So, and to use the heroic feat, it'll roll those dice. So let's click in, and we'll enter the room. We'll use the heroic feat. We'll clear the log here. Right. So what's happening here is it's getting a move die action and then a roll die action. No, a roll die activation. Right. So that's what it's waiting for, is like, or it's going to wait for like you to roll the die. But it doesn't, for some reason, it's not remembering that die. I think it might be that I'm not. I need to see if it's remembering, because it's like this have to create a die log is coming up when we tried to find the die and we didn't find it. So let's see what the code is doing when we actually create a die. It might be that it's not remembering it. When we go to the spawn die at, does it add it to Yeah, it adds it to the active dice list. So, oh, but that's looking at, yeah, that's looking for that specific die. And it's looking through all the lists. But so, what I'm wondering is I wonder if it's not the same die object that is being sent. That's possible. And to know that, how do I know that? Let's see. Let's just put a log in here just to make sure we're not going crazy. I'm looking for let's just do the logs. It's going to say that it's looking for this certain die in however many dice. So like if it says it's looking for it in 0 dice, then obviously it's not doing the right thing. One thing that's also possible is I'm not setting that die property, which is actually quite likely that I forgot to do that. We're spawning the die here. Right. And yeah, I'm definitely not doing that. We have the 2 components here for the dice. One of them is sort of based on the system that it came with, and the other is our own one. And yep, I just totally forgot to hook up that connection. We'll let it remember what object that it's actually associated with, because unlike, so in bottom of the ninth, for example, there are literally 3 dice that are unique in the game. There are no extra copies of dice, but in One Deck Dungeon, there are all kinds of, there are like, 8 strength dice and 8 magic dice and whatever. So it's not just a single one that you need to worry about. There's a whole bunch of them. All right, so this is probably what's happening here is that we weren't able to look it up. So now we'll be able to look it up and, right, so if it's null, right, so actually this code here needs to not be in here. It needs to be, oh no, here, this is moved to where it goes. But yeah, this code here needs to be talking about, this needs to be not just if it's a, created die. Since we're moving any, if we're moving any die, then we need to move it. So I think the destination is going to be the dice pool, and it'll go there. We have a logic here to deal with that. So that seems good. So let's go and check that out. I feel like we're on track here. One thing that isn't going to work right now until I add it in is if we continue the game, the dice views won't be set up yet. So that's why we're restarting from the start of the game each time. But that's something we'll add in. So when you continue the game, the dice will be in place based on the state of the game. All right. So we get our die right there. We go into a room and we'll use the heroic feat. Hey! So, you'll be like, oh, the die moved, that's weird. But there are no errors. So what happened is the die just moved into the pool, which is what we want. And I think it's waiting for us to roll it now. Yeah, it's waiting for us to roll it. Where, like, we could click it or something like that. I'm just gonna, maybe I don't have the code in there that does the rolling. I could see if I could do it easily. Let's see. I think I just have a method that causes them to roll. So let's go into this activation view is just empty. So And we'll just make it so it automatically rolls without having to click right now. Yeah, there's like a method to roll dice. And what it does is it like adds a handler. So this needs to like, right now, this is just like, still has some fixed stuff for this like looping use thing. That was just for before. And we need to have it like, come back and tell the activation that it finished. Because it needs to tell the engine what the numbers were. So if we do this, we just call roll dice. Oh, I don't need it. Why am I doing that? So here we need to give information about what were the results of the roll. And this probably already also tells us which dice to roll. So right now, like it's just going to roll everything, but maybe we're just re-rolling one. This stuff hasn't been connected into the engine yet. But I think we'll just fake it. So we'll give it info. It wants a dictionary of those things. Okay. Let's just tell it lies for now, so we can proceed. So I don't know if I have time to go through all this today, but what it basically would do is when the dice box is rolling the dice, it like uses physics to roll all the dice at the same time. And when it gets all the results, then it can tell this code what the results are, and then this can tell the engine what the real results were. But for now, we're just going to lie. Just to see something happen on the screen. And it's also, this code is lying, but it's going to be modified to do the right thing. So don't worry. And we'll just say, you always roll 6 because that's awesome. And you can have those results. And you can proceed. Cool. All right, so this should... So normally, it would be actually waiting for you to click or whatever to roll the dice. It's just going to go ahead and roll them straight away. And so what I expect to see is we'll roll that black die, and then it'll pull up all the other dice and roll them immediately as well. And tell the engine lies. But that's okay. It'll do what we say. All right. So there's our heroic die. We'll go into the encounter, enter the room, use the heroic feat. So, oh yeah, there's no action for roll dice action. So it just sort of gets mixed up there, and it flew away. So the die is actually falling forever, I think, right now. We go, yeah, it's gone into the wild. You can see the numbers going crazy here. I'll tell it not to do that. There it is. So something's up there. Probably wasn't in the right place when it got rolled, and it flew out of the invisible box that the dice roll in. But you can see that there's a roll dice action that it's complaining that we don't know about. That's actually probably not going to really do anything in the view because the view rolls its own dice. But we can fill that in with a stub, and then we'll proceed. So let's make a new game action. Yeah, that's one of the tricky things if you have physics is... Oh, that's the wrong name. That needs to be view. physics don't always play the way you want. They don't always do the right thing. Things go through walls or bounce away, so you need to deal with, you know, things going wrong, especially if you have like, you know, a slower graphics card, then it can skip some frames and then suddenly things are bonkers. So you have to watch out for that sort of thing. So we have roll dice action view. It's just not going to do anything because we sort of rolled the dice already. So, but we need to, the way things are set up, it needs to be handled even if it's not going to do anything, because it might, you know, it might end up doing something. So we want to be able to have the capability to do that. Okay, and we'll go and add it into the game view as well. What? Oh. I did it wrong. What was I editing before when oh, I forgot to make this a game action view. That's right. All right. So we'll add that component, the roll dice. Come on. Action view. Okay. Which won't have any connections, it's just hanging out. And let's go with that. So the die might still roll away forever, but we should be able to proceed. And I'll sort that other bit out. So in Explore, we get a new die. We open the door. And use the heroic feat. Oh, and yeah. And it's gonna roll it again. Shouldn't have rolled it again, but that's okay. This die is also falling forever. It's an orthographic camera, so you can't see. And then challenge box activation. I don't know what that is. Oh, that's right. Okay, so yeah, it's actually getting to the point where it wants me to put the dice into the boxes. That's what the challenge box activations are, and I haven't gotten there yet. But it did roll most of the dice. You see the values here, even though I lied and told that it was all sixes to the engine. So yeah, so you know we've got. Let's see, take stock of what we got to here. So we were able to activate the heroic feat, and we also placed the heroic die there. Actually, I guess we could see if placing the second heroic die works. Didn't try that, but it could work. It's probably going to put it on top of the other one at the moment, but let's see. So we explore, and then it'll say we go into a room and we flee. Yep, there goes the next. So it just went on to the same spot. Obviously, we're going to need to have a mechanism to, you know, find the next available spot that it could go to instead of just, as you know, we just put that little, like, move it up a little bit, but it needs to have a little more know-how to be able to put more than one die on that spot. And yeah, so here, I guess this is actually a question that I'm not sure about. If I activate this heroic feat, do I roll both? Oh, and here it says there's a select dice activation. So it's asking me which to roll. So I'm not sure if we can roll both or choose to roll just one. So that's something we'll need to deal with as well. So yeah, so there's, you know, lots more to integrate, but we're making good progress here and moving right along. I think that's going to be probably about it for this part of the dev stream. I'll take any questions from the chat if you want. And while I'm waiting for the questions, I'll just start stubbing it, an activation for that. Select dice activation. What do you do? Daft Turtle says you don't need to roll both, but you can. Well, that's what this activation is about, I think. It's about saying, hey, which one do you want to roll? And then, we would prompt you, and you can click on one to do that. But I'm not going to have time to do all that today. But I will stub it in. I wonder how the Kickstarter is doing. Hey, Kickstarter, how are you doing? Did we make it to the stretch goal? Let's find it. One Deck Dungeon. It shows me in Canadian, which is kind of weird. I don't know how I can tell it to don't do that. 24,832. Getting close. Almost to the 25,000 stretch goal. So let's try to power through a couple stretch goals here in the last 48 hours. That would be really cool. All right. Looks like we don't have any more questions, so I'm just going to finish this very exciting stub and then sign off. Select. Whoop. Delect. I'm sure we'll have some more developer streams as we, after the Kickstarter, as we continue with development, show you how things are going, and it's always a bit of a learning experience too. If you're interested in making games, you can get some idea about how you might do a game. So it's a little different than other games, but there's some elements that could be interesting, especially if you're doing digital tabletop. And I'm just gonna get this in, clear that error, even though it won't do anything. Select dice activation view, and let's go through that sequence, and then that'll be it. Yeah, normally things are faster when I'm running the game, but with the screen share, with the screen sharing, it's definitely slower. Streaming, I guess, basically like screen sharing. All right, there's my heroic, and I'm gonna flee, and there's the other heroic. And then when I go back in, that will show now that you know what it is. It's not a closed door, but and then when I hit that, so now it's it did the select dice activation, but the code's not doing anything. That code is going to need to pop up a dialog or highlight the dice and say, click on the ones you want to roll and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, we will get to that in the next time. Well, probably it'll be done by the next dev stream, but you know what I mean. So that's going to be it for today. Have a great day, and spread the word about the Kickstarter. It's less than 48 hours, so it's the home stretch, and I think we can do some great things. We will talk to you soon. Actually, yeah, we'll be on the live stream on Friday. There'll be like a end of Kickstarter party stream. So that's it, and see ya.